The streets will never make you grow. It's not a seed, it's a gutter. There's no happy endings in this life. So this is my message to you. The streets will never love you back.
How? What's up, guys? Okay, well, today I got a special guest. His name is Mike Codella. Mike Codella was an ex-cop. He worked for the DEA. He wears a lot of hats. He's actually a Jiu-jitsu 4th degree black belt. So there's a lot to this guy. You know, he wrote a book. He's an author of ALPHAVILLE. And there's a lot to him. And he's a Brooklyn guy. He grew up in Canarsie. So I know he's a tough guy, 100%, you know. But let me give a shout out to a few guys, some people out there. Gunsmoke the Don, Boston J, Yo Mama, Brad R, Anthony Santoro, Nicholas Baxter, Live and Let Live, and to all you people who showed up today to hang out with me and hear Mike's story, thank you so much for showing up. Now, I also want to say, look, when I do these interviews, I go off the cuff. I don't stay on, I don't have a sheet in front of me. I go off the cuff. Sometimes the interviewer helps me. He gives me some questions to ask him to make it a little easier for me. But I basically throw my own questions out there. And if I screw up, it's on me. Rob D, I see you. Don Vito, how are you? Albert Sullivans, Gaetano Bracco. To all you people who showed up, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to put Mike on. I'm going to start this interview. And we're going to have fun with this. So let me introduce Mike. Mike Codella.
How are you, baby?
How's everything?
Good, man. How are you?
Good. It's a pleasure to say hello to you. You know, we spoke over the phone. I never met you in person, which I'm looking forward to meeting you in person one day. And there's a lot to you. You know, you're a very interesting guy. You know, I see a lot of photos of you playing around with this jiu-jitsu stuff. You know, I know you study under, how do you pronounce it?
Enzo,
there you go. And Gracie. So these people are badass people, you know, in what they do. So I know you're a badass for sure. You have an academy in Staten Island.
Yep.
It's called
Codella Academy.
Codella Academy. So I want to advertise that for you. He has a Codella Academy. This guy is a 4th degree black belt.
Yes.
In jiu-jitsu. So just imagine, this guy's a bad motherfucker. Believe it. This guy would take you down, he'll choke you out, and he'll put you to sleep quick. Believe me. I know he will. And he laughs because he knows he will too. But look, I wanted to break the ice with you. And so tell me where you was brought up.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Canarsie, Brooklyn. I spent my whole life there until I actually got married, had some kids, and then I moved out to Staten Island.
Okay. And you're in Staten Island ever since?
Yes.
I feel sorry for you.
Yeah, thank you.
Staten Island is actually nice, a little congested, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's congested out there. My sister's out there. But so I know you were a detective and a sergeant, and you worked a lot of cool units. We spoke about that. Can you name some of the units you worked in?
Yeah, I was in I worked in the DEA, Drug Enforcement Administration, for a few years. I was in the Secret Service Task Force, where we did West Africans. It was a West African task force with the FBI, DEA, also the Electronic Crimes Task Force, which was also part of the Secret Service. I was in the Special Fraud Squad, NYPD, Missing Person Squad, and I was in a unit called Operation 8, which was kind of like a anti-crime unit. They would kind of, I guess you would consider like an anti-crime unit, but we basically we mostly focused on drug dealing.
Okay. And I mean, at one time you were even on the Son of Sam case.
Well, yeah. So after I did all the DEA and Secret Service and a couple of those units, then I was actually in a missing person unit for a little while, and I worked the path, let's say the cold case part of the Son of Sam case, because Son of Sam, as most people know, maybe they don't, but Son of Sam was a serial killer from 1976 to 1977, and when he got arrested initially, he said that he played like he was like a crazy person. He said that his neighbor's dog spoke to him and told him to kill all these people. He killed 6 people and he shot 7 or 8 others. And he originally said that his neighbor's dog told him to kill all these people. After he got arrested, he did some time in jail. He kind of recanted that story and told the story about how he was part of a cult, and he wasn't the lone killer, the lone shooter. He was involved with a group of people that were doing it. So that's the part that I investigated years later. Even years after he said that, I picked it up.
Okay. And now I remember the Son of Sam. You know, I'm 52 years old. I think you have a couple years on me.
Yeah.
And actually, I grew up on Bay 16th and Bed, and the Son of Sam, he committed one of those murders located on Shore Parkway. I think it was between Bay 17th and Bay 16th.
Okay, yeah, I thought it was Bay 14th, but I may be wrong. That area confused me a little.
Well, you know, I might be Bay 16th and Bay 14th, so you're probably right.
Right.
Yeah, you're probably right. And I tell you, you know what? Those times, looking back, those were the best times growing up.
Yeah, those were good times. Yeah, he put a lot of fear into people. That particular time, you know, when he roamed the streets. Again, you're a little bit younger than me, and I was very young at the time too. So I was probably, let's say 12 or 13. But even then, I remember girls putting their hair up because they thought he was shooting. Like basically, a lot of his victims were dark-haired girls with long hair. So girls were dyeing their hair blonde and putting their hair up just to avoid being a victim of this screwball.
Yeah, because yeah, exactly. He's a screwball. And I remember because when I was a kid, I always remember my mother telling me, "Be careful out there. You know, you got the Son of Sam running around."
Right.
I might have been maybe 10 years old or something at that time. Right. You know.
Right.
But you know what? I also watched another interview you did. I forgot the guy's name, but in the story you said that you were doing something undercover and working on Eddie Leno.
No, what happened was, no, I met Eddie. I dealt with Eddie Leno when I was a civilian, when I was a kid, actually, when I was about 16 or 17 years old. And what happened was, 2 of my friends, not like my close friends, not guys I hung out with every night or saw every weekend, but 2 guys I would see once in a while, and I'd knock around with them once in a blue moon. They told me they had something going on with this. There was a bar over in Red Hook that was closed down, and Eddie Leno wanted them to go in and take the Joker poker machines out and a few cigarette machines if they were in there, and that kind of stuff. And he said there was a couple $100 in for each of us if we go in there and get those machines out. So not so much that I needed the money, because even as a kid, I kind of worked a little bit here and there, but I just thought it'd be a kind of an interesting thing to do, to go in there. And anyway, my friends get a hold of a truck illegally, naturally. We go to this Red Hook place, this Red Hook bar at night, and I have to go into the back, hop the back fence, break the window open, get in the bar, open the front door, and we take all these Joker poker machines out. And we put them in this truck, a couple of cigarette machines. And we were supposed to meet Eddie Leno over in, I'm sure you're familiar with Marine Park.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. So we were going to meet Eddie Leno. It was probably midnight or a little after midnight. we had to meet Eddie Leno there a little after midnight, and he was going to give us the money. That was the initial deal. Well, when we get there, first of all, like I said, we're driving in this stolen truck, and when we get there, one of the guy who set up the whole deal for us, or this whole thing, he said, "I'll talk to Eddie. I'm friends with him. I'll handle it." So we all get out. He walks over to Eddie. Eddie's leaning on his Cadillac, and he says, "Well, yeah. First of all, I don't know. You know Eddie, right? Or you knew of him, or did you actually know him?"
Yes, I was in Eddie's company a couple of times when I was younger. He was Georgie Adamo's godfather. He was real tight with Georgie Adamo's father, Georgie Crowbar. And, Georgie Crowbar ends up getting killed later on by Jerry Papper. But, yes, I do know Eddie Leno. Yes.
Well, I don't know how like in general, I don't know what kind of guy he was, obviously, but I know his reputation. And I knew his reputation then because, excuse me, he was at the time dealing coke to a lot of the guys in my neighborhood that dealt. Now, I never fooled around with drugs at all, and neither did my close friends. But so I knew he was, I knew who he was and what he was and all that stuff. And anyway, my friend goes out to. He was very arrogant. That's why I started to say he had an arrogance about him in these couple of minutes, even before I got to speak to him. Anyway, my friend gets out to speak to him, and the plan changes now where Eddie wants us to go and follow him to some other location, dump some of the stuff out there, and possibly go even to another location, dump the other stuff out there. And when I heard that, I was like telling my friend, now Eddie wasn't too far from me, but I'm like, I ain't not doing that. The deal was to come here and get the money and get paid. And again, we were in this hot truck, and actually on the highway, we thought we were going to get pinched because there was a police car who went right by us with their lights and sirens. We thought they were coming for us naturally, but they weren't. So I was already a little hinked up, and I'm like, you know what? I'm not going. You guys want to go. I'm not going. The deal was to get paid here. And Eddie hears me arguing with my friend, for lack of a better term, and he calls me over. And when I went over like face to face with him, he asks me who I was. He was checking me up and down, and I thought for sure he knew there was a problem. He's like, what's the problem? One of those. And I told him basically, well, I thought we were done once we got here. And to be honest, I thought he was either going to take a smack at me or I don't know, maybe on the way back clip me. I don't know what I was, but to be honest, I was afraid. I was scared.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And he reached into his pocket and he asked me my name. I told him who I was, where am I from? I told him I was from Canarsie. He gave me one. Yeah, I figured. He said something like that. Figured you were. He took out his money and he threw it at begrudgingly threw me the money in my hand, as if like he was doing me a favor. And then I got the money. I went back to my friends just a couple of yards away, and I said, "I'm done." And they said, "Well, what about our money?" I'm like, "You go. You want your money? You go ask them the way I got my money." But they didn't. They ended up doing the whole. They went all over with this guy all night with this truck, and their Joker poker machines.
Yeah, well, as you know, later on, you probably found out Eddie Leno, all he dealt with drugs and murder. I mean, that's the type of guy he was, drugs and murder. That was Eddie Leno,
yeah.
And he loved to do that yayo.
Oh, that I didn't know.
Yeah, he used to love to do the yayo.
Yeah.
All those guys back in the day, they all say they never did the yayo, but believe me, they all did a lot of cocaine. And when they did the cocaine, it got them paranoid. And a lot of wise guys back in the day, they couldn't kill somebody without doing a line of cocaine. A lot of guys, that was their balls. Do a line and go out and kill somebody. And I knew a lot of guys like that in the street.
Yeah.
But so what made you want to become a cop after you met Eddie Leno?
Well, you know what? That was one of the incidents that made me not want to go down, for lack of a better term, down that path. Because I just could, well, for a couple of reasons. Number one, I didn't want to get pinched. That was number one. Also, number two, just his arrogance about him. And the whole feeling when I turned my back and was walking away, like I said, I felt like he was going to maybe put a bullet in the back of my head. That whole incident turned me off. And then I'll tell you something else about that incident. So the two guys that and like I said, I grew up with these two kids. One of them, actually, I knew since I was a little kid, like 5 years old. And the other kid, I got to know a little bit better in high school. I'll tell you what happened to them. So the one kid became, he always had a problem like fitting into a crew or a clique or whatever. He ends up getting a legit job working for a armored truck company. And of course, he couldn't stay on the straight path. They actually try to rob, or they do rob the armored truck, and he gets picked up and arrested. And he cooperated against everybody who was involved with the armored truck. That was the one guy. The other guy actually gets involved with Tommy Patera. And I had known that he was with Tommy Karate and doing stuff. Anyway, he gets his head chopped off. His head rolls up on Plum Beach in Sheepshead Bay. A couple of years later, when he was a young kid, he was like 20, 21 years old when it happened.
I know exactly where that is.
Yeah, and that's what they found his head over there. And I don't know for sure what the exact correlation with Tommy was at the time, but I knew from hearing from some of these guys that Tommy was robbing Colombians, sticking them up and taking their material or taking their money or whatever. And this kid was right in the middle of it. And like I said, I don't know if it was Tommy's people and Tommy that did it to him, or maybe the Colombians got with for who he was, but he ended up dying. So those were like part of the situation that made me not want to go down that path.
I'll tell you, you know what? And back in those days, I mean, people were getting killed left and right.
Yeah.
So those days were, listen, you didn't have to do anything wrong. You just had to be around and you get killed.
Right.
Because guys are just trying to make a name for themselves, and they would kill. Some of the guys even killed their own brothers.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Well, yeah, Tommy Karate at that time, I guess he was just coming up. He was probably making a name for himself. He got into this chopping up people thing. And I'll tell you, you know what? Because he was from my area, and every time Tommy killed somebody, he always came to the corner and he bragged about it. Like, I don't understand how this guy didn't get caught sooner.
Yeah.
Well,
it's funny because when I was in the DEA, actually, we were working a wire case. We were up on a couple of phones from Lower East Side people, some drug dealers from the Lower East Side. That's where I did most of I spent a lot of time there as a cop in Alphabet City. That's what the book's about. But we were doing a wire, and the guys right next to us in the same room, the guys right next to us were doing they were up on Tommy Karate's wire. And they had pictures on the wall. And like I knew several of the guys because they were from Canarsie, even though Tommy was from your neighborhood. He had guys from Canarsie apparently hanging out with, like my friend. And they all got pinched, when they took Tommy Karate down. And I actually went to Tommy's house to do the warrant. I didn't get him because he wasn't where he wasn't on Ovington. I believe he was supposed to be on Ovington in Benson, Bay Ridge, like right off of 3rd Avenue. And yeah. He had a beautiful house over there, but he wasn't there. But again, I did the search warrant there. They recovered those. He had all these crazy books on killing people and weaponry and just crazy books he has. And that's what they found over there in Ovington Street.
I ain't getting no service.
There you go. You're back, bro.
Okay, beautiful. You hear me?
Yep. Now I do.
All right, beautiful. All right. So, Tommy was a crazy guy, that's for sure. Now, in your neighborhood, so who was the wise guys in your neighborhood?
Well, they were Jojo Carrazzo, Nicky Carrazzo,
That's right. Yep.
Vic Amuso. We used to hang out at Vic's bar. It was owned by the bar Vic used to was really Vic's bar, but it was my friend's father was supposedly the owner. But everyone knew it was Vic's place over at the Walnut Bar in Flatlands Avenue.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was Vic Amuso's place. Bruno Facciola.
Bruno Facciolo. Yep. I'll tell you, you know what? You had a lot of Canarsie guys down there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Canarsie was deep, and all the Canarsie guys, they were all tough guys.
Yeah. Yeah, they were tough guys. Yeah.
Yep. And so tell me about, so you become a sergeant in the NYPD. How was it, when you first became a cop? Did you what kind of cases did you take down?
Well, when I first became a cop, I was in uniform in Coney Island. And then I wanted to go to somewhere that was a little more active, meaning more crime, where I could get involved, get my hands dirty more. Although Coney Island could be crazy at times, but a lot of the times it's a little bit quiet. So I transferred over to Lower East Side, Alphabet City, which was a project. Alphabet City down on Lower East Side, which was walled houses, Lillian walled houses, Reese houses, Baruch houses, all on Avenue D. And that at the time, we're talking about the early mid 80s, was literally the heroin capital of the world. The guys who were kids, I was a kid myself. When I came on the job, I was only 20 years old. So 21, 22, 23, all even up into my late 20s. But the guys I was dealing with, the bad guys, the kids, they were kids. They were in their early 20s, making millions of dollars. No kidding around. These guys were loaded. They weren't, of course, the guys standing on the corner pitching heroin. They were the guys in the background. But we would, they were arrestable every once in a while. They'd have material on them or guns on them, so we'd go after them also. But these young guys were making so much money back then. Everybody thinks that crack was a terrible outbreak at some point in the late 80s, 90s. But the dealers, the actual real money people, were the heroin guys. They always were. And back, like I said, we arrested a guy. Well, I don't want to say I arrested him, but he was part of the case we were involved with. He was making $101,000 per day. He himself admitted to killing 18 people and being involved with killing over 100 people himself with other people. But he himself killed 18 people.
Wow.
And he was in charge of most of the Lower East Side, most of the other guys. And he was so he was a multi-millionaire. And these other kids that were 19, 20, 21, they were millionaires.
And Alphabet City back then was a mess.
Bro, well, like I said, what made me go down there was when I was in the police academy. I normally took the train to the police academy, which is on 20th Street between 2nd and 3rd Avenue. So I used to take the L train from Canarsie and get off on 14th Street and walk. Once in a while, one of my best friend's brother actually was in the police academy with me, actually in my class, same classroom, my best friend's brother. And his father would drive us to the academy because he was a cop and he worked right in the area. So he would drive us to the police academy, to the police academy. And once in a while, he'd take a shortcut. Instead of getting off on 23rd Street, if there was traffic, he'd get off on Houston Street and take in and out of the streets. And we'd drive through Alphabet City, down Avenue D.
I know exactly where it is.
Yeah. Down Avenue D, we drive sometimes down avenues. And this is going back to 1983 when I was, like I said, in the academy, 83, 84. And there would be lines of people, literally lines of people, 30, 40, 50 people standing in a straight line, waiting to cop their heroin, being told to line up, get your money out, clear as a bell. You'd hear the dealer or the steerers or the lookouts, get your money out, no singles, 20s only, get in line. And as we were driving by, I said to my friend's father, who was a cop, an active guy who was in emergency service, like the SWAT team, rather. He was a good guy, tough cop. I said, well, how does this go on? What's going on here? And he said, you know what? The city knows about it. The mayors all know about it for years. It's contained. All the heroin, all the dope, all the heroin users, drug addicts, they're here. And they, and that's the way it is. They just leave them in this area, and as long as they don't venture out, nobody really cares. And I'm like, what kind of shit is that? I never heard of such a thing. So once I got on police force, I made it my business. I wanted to go down there and basically change stuff up down there a little bit.
Sure, absolutely. And at that time too, I mean, there was the thing on drugs, right?
Well, they had the war on drugs, but they started what they called Operation Pressure Point. So what Operation Pressure Point was, it meant that anybody arrested, first of all, they didn't want uniformed guys going after drug dealers, drug users, anything with drugs, because they felt that it was corruption prone. Wherever there's drugs, of course, there's money. And they tried to keep, since the Knapp Commission back in the 70s, they tried to keep uniform cops away from drug deals. But I was a housing cop, and I worked in the projects, and that didn't apply to. We didn't let that apply to us. It could have, but we didn't. We ignored that bullshit, and we went after these drug dealers. So what the city did, something they thought was going to be a real great preventative measure. They did something called Operation Pressure Point, and what that meant was anybody locked up on the Lower East Side, Alphabet City, had to go through the system. Whether you were arrested for a can of beer, jaywalking, smoking a joint, beating up your wife, a vehicle accident, any arrest on the Lower East Side, you had to go through the system. Not just a summons, not a disappearance ticket. You had to go through the system. And they thought that would be like a deterrent for people to go down there, because you get arrested, you go through the system. But drug users didn't care. And like I said, for the most part, uniform NYPD weren't locking up drug dealers or drug users because they weren't allowed to. So it really was kind of counterproductive. They said they were putting people through the system, but in actuality, they were putting a guy who smacked his wife through the system, or a car accident, or something not so, a pot smoker, something not so heavy. So them guys went through the system. But we went at, my partner and I, and then my team, the Operation 8 guys, we went after these guys, and we did a number on them.
I can imagine. Isn't it something how back then, all these with the drugs, if someone was smoking a joint, you throw the cuffs on them and they go through the system. How things have changed?
It's crazy. I don't even know how to describe it, to be honest. I mean, the bottom line is, people want to get high. They want to smoke. They want to get high. They want to smoke pot. What they do in their privacy, their own home, who really cares? But the problem is when they get behind the wheel of a car, and I drive around constantly, and I'll turn next to me, and the guy's smoking pot in his car. So what's the difference if this guy now, when a cop pulls this guy over, there's no way to tell if this guy's high or not. He's allowed to smoke pot now. He's allowed to smell of pot now. How do you know if this guy's high or not? And what do you do as far as driving while intoxicated or driving under the influence? There's no breathalyzer. So it's really it's a tough situation for the cops.
Yeah. I'll tell you, in all honesty, I mean, the cops can't do their job no more. That's for sure. I mean, they took the rule book away from them. They can't do their job no more. But all right, let's get into okay, so you become a cop and you work down in Alphabet City. How was working there? I know you didn't do the things by the book. Did you do everything by the book?
No, you can't. Like you just said, it's hard for a cop to do his job. So it's harder now, because now no one backs cops up. And when I say no one, I mean the government doesn't, the mayor doesn't, the governor doesn't. No one backs the cops up. When I was a cop, they put handcuffs on us so you couldn't do your job, but it wasn't as restricted as it is now, because we did have backing by the mayor in a lot of cases and stuff, but the police department's rules kind of locked us into not performing. So in other words, you're not allowed to grab a guy and just throw him against the wall and toss him for dope. You're not allowed. It's a violation of his rights. But you know what? You can't make a case unless you grab a guy and throw him against the wall, because dope users and drug dealers don't walk around holding drugs where everybody can see it, right? They have it stashed in their pockets, in their groin, in their socks, in their butt, anywhere. So we knew who was dirty because me and my partner worked down there for about 7 years in plain clothes. Now everybody knew who we were because we locked up everyone. So it wasn't like we were undercover, but we were in plain clothes, soft clothes, and people would come to us. One dealer would come to us to give us information on another dealer. A worker would say, do you mind if I sell a little bit today? I'll go over there, leave us alone. But these guys are doing this over here. Would you pick them? So everybody was looking to ingratiate themselves with us. We'd make a lot of arrests, and our payment was either paying guys off with money out of our own pocket, sometimes with drugs from other people. You know, we take drugs off of this guy, give to this guy. And that's how we make cases. I mean, I know it was not allowed. It's against the law. It was illegal. I could have been arrested. But the bottom line was I never did anything to benefit myself financially. It wasn't like I was taking drugs and selling it. What I would do is maybe if I had a drug dealer, again, come to me, or a user, let's just say a user, would say, you know, these guys are selling over there. I'm sick. I'll tell you who's selling, where they're keeping it. Okay, give me all the information. If I grab the guy and if I get the dealer and he's dirty, then I leave some dope for this guy to get better, get help, you know, fix himself up with, basically. So the bottom line is, does the ends justify the means? Does me letting this guy go, letting him go get high, does it justify me locking up a guy that's moving a couple of thousand bags of heroin every other day or every 2 days? So me and my partner, we sort of did, and that's
I think, yeah. You know what? Listen, I'm sure you saved some kid down the road, you know, by arresting all these drug dealers and stuff like that. I know, you know what? These guys in the street, they only know of one way of making money. It's either drugs, doing stick-ups, and that's their life, you know, growing up in those, you know, areas, Alphabet City, the projects, things like that. But
well, you know, one guy, there was a guy, we used to see him all the time. His name was Mario. He always used to cop. He wasn't a dealer. He was actually a clean cut kid, probably in his mid-20s at the time. He had a legit job, but he had a heroin problem. He had a heroin addict. You know, he was a functioning junkie, basically. And then I hadn't seen him for months. And one day I see him. And again, I used to see him cop all the time. I had arrested him a few times, but a lot of times I'd see him cop and I wouldn't even bother him because I knew he wasn't a bad kid and he had a problem. But I don't see him for a long time, and then I see him finally. And I said, Mario, where you been? I haven't seen you. And his mother, I think, still lived in the projects, but he had moved out to Queens or something. I said, I haven't seen you. Where you been? And really, what he told me made it all worth what we were doing. He said, you know what? The truth is, I'm afraid to get locked up by you guys again, so I kicked my habit. And that said it all. You know, just the idea that he was afraid to get collared by us, possibly do time. He forced himself to quit. So either forcing people to quit that way or locking up, you know, major higher level dealers and keeping the material off the avenue. You know, eventually when I went to the DEA, we did this big case on these guys down there, and we locked up because we couldn't, you know, we were taking these guys off the street and they were semi-high level. Like I said, they were all driving at the time Lamborghinis and beautiful cars. I mean, unbelievable cars. This is when cars weren't leased; they were bought outright with cash, which they all did back in the mid '80s. Nobody had Mercedes and nobody had BMWs. You know, and Corvettes, and these guys all had them, and they were all bought out cash. But we couldn't get like the top guy because, you know, we didn't have the jurisdiction to go out of state or go across different parts of the city and chase guys all over. and put up a wiretap. And then what happens is the DEA was actually doing a case on some guys on the Lower East Side from Alphabet City, and they asked whenever people needed information about Lower East Side guys, they would come to me and my partner. So the DEA called us up to their office, and they show us pictures. You know these guys, and they threw out a bunch of pictures. So yeah, we knew them all. This is this guy. This is him. We knew them all by name, by nickname, where they lived. They said they were shocked. They were like, "Holy mackerel, we got to get you guys up here." So they actually went to our chief, and me and my partner got assigned to the DEA. We got our government vehicles. We got sworn in, deputized, all that stuff. And we did this big case with DEA where we finally were able to, we went up on a wiretap, and we took down 40 heroin dealers, some of the major guys. Like I said, that guy I spoke about before who did all those killings, and he ended up not being on our wiretap, but ultimately, I really believe that I was the guy that helped put him away, even though I didn't put the handcuffs on him. But we took, like I said, 40 dealers down, top guys, this other main guy, and literally we changed Alphabet City from it was a disaster zone, a war zone, to almost like a college campus. It looked like a college town where all the yuppies started moving in. They cleaned up the buildings. Now there's all buildings down there. Now it's called the East Village. It turned from being Alphabet City. Now it's the East Village, and I really think that me and my partner and the DEA guys, we the guys that are responsible for that.
Yeah, and all the side streets over there are beautiful. They got little restaurants.
Yep.
Barbershops, styling places, clothing places.
Yeah.
Yes, it's very pretty down there. I have a friend that lives down there, actually on Houston Street. But
it's all cool down there now.
Yeah, but so just for example, let the people know, because now what'd you do? 20 years on the force?
Yep.
20 years. Now, when you take down 40 guys, okay, and obviously, you know what, they have their little gang, they're carrying guns, there's murders involved. Out of 40 guys, any of these guys flip?
You want to hear what's the funny thing about that? So we took 40 guys down. And just as a side note, their lawyer was Lynn Stewart. You know who Lynn Stewart is?
I don't.
Okay, Lynn Stewart represented the blind sheik that blew up the World Trade Center the first time.
I was with him in Otisville, and every time that blind sheik sat down with a visitor, if someone came to visit him, there was always a tape recorder in front of him. He couldn't talk unless there was a tape recorder recording him. The blind sheik.
Yeah, his lawyer was Lynn Stewart, and they actually locked her up years later for conspiring with the blind sheik on terrorist acts. And she was no good. She was dirty. She was partners with Kunstler when he was alive, and she was up to no good. But anyway, my point was, so Lynn Stewart, she was like the house lawyer for Alphabet City, for the major guys, because her husband, from what I heard, grew up down on Pitt Street, which is right there. And the husband knew these guys, and they referred her. And so anyway, she actually knew me and my partner.
I'll tell you something, because I know exactly where Pitt Street is too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I have two friends that live down there. And it's right in that area where you just said, Pitt Street.
Pitt Street, right by Alpha. It's right by Avenue D. You're walking a couple of blocks away. So Lynn Stewart, I'll tell you, kind of just off the mark a minute, then we'll get back. She hated my partner and I, because every time we lock up one of these Alphabet City guys, we would tell them, "Hey, tell Lynn Stewart we said go F herself. We hate her. She's this, she's that." We'd give it to the kid, and of course he'd run back and tell Lynn Stewart, So now when they're all locked up and they're all in the bleachers in federal court, she walks by my partner and I, and she was a little short, chubby broad, and she nudges my partner in a swivel chair. She almost knocked him off the chair. That's how pissed off she was at us. But anyway, she represented all these guys. So you talk about flipping. So the main guy that we locked up was a Spanish kid. His name was Lucho. His nickname was Lucho, and he had never done time from what we knew. I don't remember if we locked his mother up or we tried to lock her up, because she was on phone calls too, and she knew what was going on, and his sister. The whole family was up to no good. They lived out in Bayside, Queens. The number 2 guy was a black kid, tough street black kid who had done time and jailhouse muscles and a badass kid, right? He was like the number 2 guy in the organization. And like I said, Lucho was probably first, had more money, moved more dope, and the other number 2 guy was this black kid. And then they all distributed to these other 40 guys and, you know, all that stuff. Anyway, we thought for sure Lucho was going to flip. For sure. We thought Lucho never did a day in jail. He's soft. We're gonna threaten to put his mother away. We're gonna threaten to put his sister away. Do you know Lucho stayed strong? And the number 2 guy flipped, the tough black kid. We were shocked. Once he flipped, nobody took it to trial. Everybody copped the plea. Out of the 40 people, everybody copped the plea, or well, either they all pled out or just copped the plea or to give them time served or whatever. But nobody took it to trial. Even the main guy. He couldn't go. The main guy couldn't fight against the number 2 guy because number 2 guy, it's like Sammy going against John. He couldn't win. So
yeah, that's I tell you, it's something you mentioned that because I mean, what a crazy time that was when that happened. You know, when Sammy the Bull flipped. I mean, that was like out of like holy shit. You know.
That was crazy. Yeah, I was in DEA at the time. I remember it actually vividly. We were actually doing paperwork on some big arrest. It came over the news, and all the DEA guys knew I was from Brooklyn. They knew I knew a few people. They were like giving me the digs, you know. Hey, your boy Sammy flipped. I said, he ain't my boy. I don't even know Sammy. You know, I knew the name obviously, but I don't know. Yeah,
and that's the thing too. At that time, like when Sammy flipped, like he flooded the gates. I mean, people said if Sammy could flip, I could flip too. You know.
Well, that's about, like I said, this big guy, this Spanish kid, not on my case. So this other kid, his name, we call him in the book Davy Blue Eyes. That's what I call him in the book, and it's similar to his name. So he was like the number 1 guy down there. He used to get his material from the Chinese, white heroin from the Chinese, and tough kid, ex-Marine, sharpshooter, shot somebody from the roof of a building on the Lower East Side. Tough kid. So when we went up on the wire, we were hoping our guys would contact him and he'd go down with these guys. But at this particular time, they had a falling out, and they didn't talk on the phone at all with this other guy. So it was a little disappointing. So we take down the 40 guys. Everybody flips. Well, everybody cops a plea because of this other guy cooperating. But the number 2 guy never really dealt with this guy, so he couldn't do anything on him. But in the paper, I'll never forget it. It's a funny, at least I think I got a kick out of it. I thought it was, that's what I said. I like to think that I put him away. In the paper, there was a Spanish guy named Hernandez, who I didn't know. I never heard of him. He was a heroin guy from Brooklyn, and he was cooperating. And it was all over the papers because he was a big deal. And he was cooperating. And I'm reading the paper, and I said, a heroin guy from Brooklyn who's this big of a drug dealer, he's got to know this guy, Davy Blue Eyes. He's got to know him because Davy was known throughout the city. And I can tell you a couple of stories about him, how badass he was. Besides him killing 18 people and being involved with 100 shootings, I'll tell you how bad he was. But when I read this thing in the paper about this Hernandez guy, and the name of his dope, I'll never forget it. This is going back to 1989. I still don't forget. The name of this guy, Hernandez, he had a dope brand called Unknown. And I'm reading this, and I says, this Hernandez guy has to know my guy, who I really want to lock up. So I call the U.S. attorney, and I say, hey, that Hernandez guy, would you do me a favor? Would you ask him if he knows this guy? And I give him my guy's name. In fact, I go up there and I give it a folder. I said, would you ask this Hernandez? Because he's got to cooperate against everybody, right? You know, if you cooperate, you got to cooperate against everybody when the feds ask you. You can't say, yeah, I don't want to do this guy. I don't want to do that guy.
Yeah. There's no pick and choosing.
Right. So, Hernandez, sure as hell, knows my guy. and he's done deals with him for years, and he's going to cooperate against my guy. So we go. I don't go. DEA goes that day, and they lock up. They lock up this guy, Davey Blue Eyes, all because I happened to read the paper and realize this guy Hernandez must have done him. And then, like I said, he cooperated eventually. Anyway, Davey, but he killed almost as many guys. He killed one guy less than Sammy, but he was involved with killing 100 people. So he was a bad guy.
He was a bad guy. What did he get? Life?
I don't know what they sent him to, but he didn't do a lot of time because he ends up cooperating.
Oh, he cooperated. Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, what, you talk about the stamps back then and the heroin, like you say, you remember the name Unknown. And all these dope dealers back then, what they did was they had their own stamp with their bag. This way, all the people who were doing dope, they would know what is the good dope. You know,
Right.
and I think they probably do that till today.
I'm sure they do. Yeah, they do. Yeah.
You know? But I mean, they're very organized. You know what? They're the big suppliers. They bag the stuff up. They hand it to the handlers outside. And like you said, but there was one of the guys in the chat said something about in Philadelphia, they do this on the corners regularly with the cops watching now. So the cops don't even do nothing. It's like, because these people, if they don't get their dope or the fentanyl, whatever it is, they get sick. So it's like totally legitimate now, just to be out in the open and pass around bags of dope.
It's terrible. I mean, it's terrible.
I mean, it just goes to show you where we're going with society today.
I'll tell you, there was a guy that came out of jail. And when he first came out, a Spanish guy, he was at the time in his late 20s. Came out of jail. He looked really, muscular, good, tough-looking guy. And he used to give me and my partner the eye, like he hated me and my partner because we were locking everybody up, So, of course, we kind of made him our target. But eventually we kind of got to like him. He kind of came around. He would come and give us a little information now and then on who was dealing. And he wasn't a bad guy. Well, wasn't a bad guy. I mean, he was a drug guy, but there were worse guys, I guess, in that life. But anyway, so now one day, me and my partner are looking to make an arrest, and we know that somebody tells us they're dealing in this particular building, 10 Avenue D, which is right on the corner of Houston and Avenue D. Somebody comes and tells us they're dealing in 10 Avenue D right on the first floor. So me and my partner run in the building. We grab a couple of buyers. I run upstairs to get the dealer, and it turns out to be this guy, right? This guy who I kind of like a little bit at this point, right? So I check him to see what he had. If he didn't have a lot, I was going to kick him in the ass and let him go, to be honest. I check him. He's got like over 400 bags of dope on him. So I said, bro, I can't let you go. This is, I can't let you go. So he understood. He wasn't going to fight. He wasn't going to run. He says, all right, can you do me a favor? Can you at least let me get high before I go away, before I go in? He said, because I'm going to get sick. So I said, okay. So I give him a bag of dope. So my partner takes the buyers, locks them up, puts them in the car. He waits outside for me. So I give this guy a bag of dope. He said, that's not going to cut it. I said, all right. So I give him another bag. That's not going to cut it. So I'm like, well, how many bags of dope do you need not to get sick? 10. 10 bags of dope. That's $100.
That's crazy.
Yeah, crazy. And he looked good. You wouldn't even know he was a dope user, right? So he snorted up. So I'll tell you what's funny. So I give this guy his 10 bags of dope. He snorts it up. Now he's feeling okay. He's not going to get sick. He's fine. Cuff him up. Get a ride back to the command. When I get back to the command, I can't find my police radio. I'm like, don't even tell me I left it on over there. I put somebody grabs my guy from me, puts him in a cell. I get in the car and I zip all the way back. Now it's like a 15-minute ride from where I was. All the bunch of guys, other dealers, other guys that knew me, and all the bad guys hanging out in front of the building. I run right past them. I go up on the first floor. My radio was still there. I grab the radio. I walk out, and they said, "You left that." They thought I left it on purpose. They said, "You left that there on purpose, right?" So one of us would grab it and we'd get locked up. I'm like, no, stupid. I left it there because I was doing somebody a favor, and I almost got a kick in the ass.
Yeah, and now you taking down all these cases. Eventually, don't you move up in the ladder, the NYPD?
You know what? I stayed in DEA. I did some. I after that case came to a conclusion. I stayed in DEA and I did some DEA. I worked on undercover cases, some pretty cool cases. I actually enjoyed doing the undercover stuff. You know, I did some cases against some Red Hook guys, some Coney Island guys, a bunch of Chinese organization. But then I made sergeant. But that sergeant is a test taken. You take a test, you pass, and you get promoted. You fail, you don't go anywhere. But I took the sergeant test, I passed, and then I ended up going to these other units: the Special Fraud Squad, the Secret Service Task Force, some other units.
I tell you, I give you credit. You know, you did 20 years. I mean, it's not easy, you know, putting those years in. You know, I mean, looking back, it goes by fast, right? Looking ahead, it goes by slow.
Yeah, I mean, the first, like I said, when I was with my partner, first 10, 11 years, bro, that flew. It was like it was literally like going to work. Going to work was like going to hang out with your best friend, and you had a gun and badge, and you know, we were young. Like I said, we were in our 20s, and you know, we thought we were like the prince of the city. You know, we'd go to work, we'd hang out, we'd meet girls, we'd do whatever we wanted, and we lock up, you know, bad guys. As you know, we picked and choose who we wanted to lock up. Yeah, we had a good time. The first 10 years flew by, and then unfortunately, I had to do some real work sometimes.
Yeah, let me just show you a book. This is Mike's book. He's a co-author of. It's called ALPHAVILLE by Michael Codella and Bruce Bennett. New York, 1988. Welcome to Heroin City. I'll tell you, you know what? Back in those days, I mean, they were wild times. You know, I mean, the younger generation today could never comprehend, you know, how those times were. You know, because they're growing up in a different time than the era we grew up in. You know, I mean, listen, back then, as a police officer, as a cop, you guys had a lot of power.
Yeah.
You know, and some people were even lucky if they made it to the precinct.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I mean, listen, I got picked up a couple of times. I remember a cop giving me a beating. You saying? I mean, I might have probably deserved it. You know, I mean, you know, cursing at him and things like that. But it's a different time today because the cops can't even do their job today. But I also wanted to get in. Okay, so you got the Codella Academy in Staten Island. Now, what made you? How long are you doing BJJ?
I started back in the mid 90s, like 97 probably. I started 97. I started a different jiu-jitsu school in Manhattan, and I knew Renzo Gracie was around. I just told the story recently. He was just in my academy. Renzo was just in my academy Saturday, and I was telling my guys this particular story actually. So I knew Renzo was around. You know, he had an academy in New York, but it was before the internet. He wasn't in the yellow pages. No Instagram, no Facebook, none of that shit. So I couldn't find him, to be honest. I didn't know where he was. And nobody in this school I was training in wanted to tell me where he was because they didn't want to lose me as a student. Not only the instructors, but even the other guys. There was only a few guys. They didn't want to lose another guy to train with, you know. So what I did was I took a cop car one day and I drove. I knew he was on 27th Street, and I drove from one end of the west side all the way to the east side. And what he had done was, this is before he had his own school. Renzo used to rent a kung fu school, a studio, and he'd be there teaching 2 or 3 days a week, his guys. So I knew he was in a martial arts school, and it wasn't a Gracie school because it wasn't his. So I drove, like I said, from the west side to the east side, ringing every martial art doorbell on 27th Street. And sometimes they would curse me. No, he's not here. You know, they get mad that I'm asking for Gracie. They get mad at me. Or they tell me that jiu-jitsu is bullshit to get, you know, do this. And I'm like, no, I'm looking for Renzo. No. And then finally I rang a bell and the little Chinese lady answered. And I asked for him and she said, yeah, he's here on Friday nights and Saturday. I said, okay. And that's how I met him. And then I went there, like I said, the following day or that Friday, I met him and I've been with him since. That was like 97, 98.
And he was training you personally.
Well, he had a group of guys. I was one of his early students. He had, prior to me, there was a couple of guys that you probably know. Matt Serra was with him. John Danaher. He had a couple of like prior Sean Williams. They had a generation. I don't want to say generation, but there were a couple of guys there that were a little bit longer than me. And then my group came along. So wasn't like a one-on-one. He just had, it was a small, tiny group because back in 97, 98, nobody even knew what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu was, and very few people heard of the Gracies, you know?
I tell you, you know what? It's pretty interesting, you know, that you know, you became a 4th-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I mean, you know, that's some really good stuff. I mean, you know, I know you're a dangerous guy for sure. You know, but yeah. So, and what else can you tell me about yourself? As far as so you grew up in Brooklyn. You worked for the DEA. What else? So how many times a week do you train?
Well, I got my own school, so I'm there probably 5 days a week, and I train just about every time I'm there. I'm there usually in the morning and then at night. So it depends. Sometimes I'll train in the morning and at night, or sometimes I'll just pick a time either in the morning or then just at night. But I train at least 4 or 5 times a week.
That's awesome. You know what, Mike? I want to set up a schedule because I want to come down one day, and maybe I could train with you sometime.
Come down, bro. You're welcome. Got an open door policy.
Yeah, I would love to. I train with some kid, Matt, in Staten Island. He has a spot out there in the beginning of Staten Island, and we roll around on the floor sometimes. He teaches me a couple moves, but we have fun with it. But I would definitely love to come down and train with you, you know, and I know you could teach me a couple of things for sure.
Yeah, you'll like it. I have really good guys, really nice guys. Like I said, you know, the thing about my school is everybody says it who comes in. I can't believe how nice your guys are, and that's because for the most part, nobody comes into my place knowing anything as far as ground fighting. I mean, once in a while we get some wrestlers in that have a good base and have some good, you know, a good sense on the mat. But for the most part, guys come in cold, and when they come in, they're treated well. So now, as they get better, they remember how it was when they came in, and they treat the guys well. So we have no idiots, no jerks, and if we do, we get rid of them. If we got jerky guys, we beat them up so bad they don't want to come back.
I could imagine, you know, because you know, people who take jiu-jitsu, listen, I tell you, they become really good. You know, you keep on training, you become really good, and you take down people right away. You know what? It's a floor game. You know,
Yeah.
you bring them to the floor, and that's it. You know, that's what it's all about. Years ago, when I was a kid growing up, you weren't allowed to kick.
Right.
You know, you were only supposed to box. You know, the game has changed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Drastically.
Yes.
And anything else?
No, you can shout out my YouTube page.
Oh yeah, shout out your YouTube page for sure.
So the YouTube page is my name, Mike Codella, Up Against the Wall. And really what I do is I talk about some of the stuff we did, you know, some of the stuff I did as a cop. I go into some arrests I've made that are interesting. Once in a while, some current event stuff. But really, I get a lot of questions. I'm sure you get a million questions. I get a lot of questions on specific incidences that I was involved with as a cop, or how does it feel to do this, or how would you handle that? I go into some of the undercover cases I did. It's a pretty cool page. A lot of people like it. So it's called Mike Codella Up Against the Wall.
All right, beautiful. So people out there, Mike Codella Up Against the Wall. Let's give him a follow, and let's check out his page. And I'll definitely be checking it out. And we're on here now. We got 222 people in the chat. How about IG? Are you on IG?
I am. It's at Codella Academy.
Okay, at Codella Academy. And Mike, I really appreciate you coming on today. It was a pleasure meeting you. Like I said, I have your number. I'm definitely going to be in touch with you. I want to come in. Maybe we could roll around a little. You know, you give me a beating or something.
No beatings. You come in, we're gonna have a good time. You'll like it.
Maybe I'll even pass by with Tommy Dates.
Beauty.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like to put the box on the ground.
Yeah. Have you ever met Tommy?
No, I just know him by name, but I've never met him. No.
Oh yeah, so that would be nice. Used to meet. But yeah, absolutely. And listen, thank you for coming on. Like I said, I have your number. I'm definitely going to be in touch, and I'm definitely going to come by your place, 100%.
You come by anytime. Just give me a heads up, and you're welcome. And thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Mike, thanks a lot, and we'll do this again.
Okay. Absolutely.
I appreciate it. Have a great night, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right, James. Thank you, man. Thanks a lot.
Mike Codella. Thank you, Mike.
Bye, bro.
Bye. Mike Codella. Good guy. I met Mike Codella. I reached out to him. I seen a video he did with someone else who interviewed him, and I said, you know what? Let me get him on the show. He's a gentleman. He was very kind in the conversation. We spoke about a couple of things, but he came out with his book, ALPHAVILLE. So if you can, pick it up, check it out. It's a good story of the 1980s, the heroin game, and it's very interesting, how things change. So I'm going to read some comments over here. Boston J, I see you. Gaetano, Bracco, Mark Giglio. Michael, look up Jimmy Perella. He does a lot with young youth boxing. His fighting is Dedham on the 14th. Timothy Thresh, definitely great guest. Thank you. Brad R, smart guy to have on. I'll tell you what, he really is a smart guy and a gentleman, very humble. Christopher Drager, I like this fucking cop. Michael McDonald. Good stuff, Jimmy. Thank you, Michael. I tell you, it was a pleasure having him on. Miss Can't Be Wrong. Hi, I didn't get to say hello to you. I hope everything's okay with you. Jimmy, even 5 to 7 sessions of jiu-jitsu is very helpful. 100%. Absolutely. I'm definitely going to be calling him. So, guys, if you're in Staten Island, Brooklyn, Jersey, Mike Codella Academy in Staten Island. Check it out. Maybe you guys want to go down there, join up, learn some jiu-jitsu. Jimmy, great show. Shoot me a text. Mike the Printer, great guest, great show. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it. Jimmy, Mike's YouTube page is great. I have been following him for a good while. He's a great guy. Well, guys, follow him. He's I'm sure he's got a great page. I'm going to check it out. Chatting with Stacks. I've been working out like crazy, man. Good for you. You got to go do some jiu-jitsu, Stacks. Forget about all the weights and, you got to do a little jiu-jitsu. Roll around the floor, stretch. Boston J. Jimmy, do you believe mixing all types of martial arts makes you better? As I studied that. 100%. Of course it does. Knowing everything is good. My son is a BJJ to help with his boxing. All styles help each other's styles of fighting. Of course. Absolutely. Jimmy, what's good, my guy? Well, guys, I really appreciate everyone coming out tonight. We had 222 people in the chat. It means a lot to me. I hope you all enjoyed the show. I can hang out a little longer. And the other day when I was on here, I forgot to say goodbye to you guys. And I apologize. And the computer was acting up. My Wi-Fi was going in and out. And I never got to say goodbye to you guys. But I want to tell you, I apologize for that. I appreciate all you people coming in and giving me the support and the love that you guys do. It means a lot to me. My cousin had a karate school and was in Vietnam. When he came home, he trained me and my 4 brothers. We learned how to fight. Of course, absolutely. Listen, I think today, in this day and age, you have to learn how to defend yourself, for sure. You got to be very vigilant. You can't trust nobody today. The trust is out the window. You can't trust nobody. And the world we're living in today is an evil world, for sure. Payupski, Jimmy, I missed the interview. Will it be up still? Yes, I will put it up as soon as I'm done over here. It'll be up, so you guys will get to watch it again if you like. Just looking at some of these. All right, guys, I guess I'm going to make this short and sweet. Boston J, thank you for coming on. Thank you for showing up. Live and let live. To all you people, Christopher Drager, thanks for showing up. Crystal Ward, Brad R, Jaitano Bracco, Miss Can't Be Wrong, Timothy Thrash, Forever Reigning, Deborah Barron. And listen, to all you people, thank you so much. I appreciate you. I love you guys. You guys are the best followers in the world. And I guess I'll see you in my next video. Okay, guys. With that said, I love you, and I'll see you soon. Bye, guys.
The streets will never make you grow. It's not a seed, it's a gutter. There's no happy endings in this life. So this is my message to you. The streets will never love you back.